Welcome back to Real Estate Ramblings. I'm Amy Shrader with Remax Real Estate 10. I am here today with
Michelle Hodges.
Ashley Hunt.
Thank you, ladies, for being here this morning. Good to be back to do some real estate ramblings, which we've been rambling for the past 10 minutes anyway. So, but I downloaded this chart from NAR, and it talks about what buyers want most from their realtor. So I want to ask you, what is your opinion of that before I share the results? What do you think a buyer wants most from their realtor? Feel free to pop in.
Okay. Well, I think what they want most from their realtor is somebody who, again, understands the market and who doesn't, who isn't looking for the sale, obviously they're looking for the sale, don't get misunderstand me, but is looking out for their best interest, who, will be honest with them on what they're thinking. And
Okay, so let me stop you right there because you're answering more of like what qualities do they want in a realtor? And the question is, what do they want most from their realtor? Like what job do they want them to perform?
Showing houses.
Showing houses.
It's really, what they want most.
I would say prospecting. Looking for the houses more than just showing houses.
Right.
They want you to find the house.
Right, when I say showing, not just going to the property, but prospecting is the right word. Looking into that and putting things in front of them that relate to them.
Okay. Well, that was the number one answer. 50% of all buyers are looking for their agent to help them find the right home to purchase.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times as buyer's agents, I think people do think that all you do is, just kind of go open the door and show the house. And it is so much different now because, like, even when I started in 2012, yes, you had Zillow, yes, you had Realtor.com, but when somebody would contact you because they wanted to find a house, they weren't on those apps all the time. Like, they really depended on you to do the search, find some homes that matched it, and send it to them. And so now, everybody's got a cell phone, everybody's got a smartphone, everybody's got all these apps on them. And it does feel like sometimes that, like, when a buyer comes to you, it's like, oh, they already know this is what I want to go look at.
Right.
But I think that's a big part of being their agent is to look at the houses they send, identify some common, traits, and then going on and looking for other homes that might match that, as well as, trying to find off-market properties maybe to offer them as well. And I know you do that quite a bit through for sale by owners and stuff, don't you?
Yes, I do. I actually enjoy that part of it because you also get to meet to people and kind of learn a little bit about them versus just a telephone call. Because sometimes it's hard to read people through a telephone. They can sit and say, well, I want a 2-car garage and the swimming pool and, whatever. But their budget may not be that. So it's let's send them things that they can actually afford, things that may be something that they're looking for. And the main things like, 3 bedrooms versus the car garage, the more prospecting stuff of it.
I think that's important, guiding people through the market. This is a tough market. Most folks will tell you it's the toughest market they've ever seen. And so, I think it's, getting out those homes, and then making sure, like you said, as you're working with somebody for a long time, you learn more about them. And I think especially folks who are moving into the area, they are learning more about the area. And so what they may want from the first time you meet may not be exactly what they end up buying. So you just have to stay close to them, build that relationship with them, and again, work for their best interest.
Well, the number 2 thing on the list that buyers want is for their agent to help the buyer negotiate the terms of the sale. Number 3 is help with price negotiation. Number 4 is to help with paperwork. And number 5 is to determine what comparable homes are selling for. So, that's not like a just show up at the door and here you go kind of thing. There's a lot that goes into working with a buyer. And like you said, in this market, knowing what homes are selling for because, we talk about this all the time. You go show a house and you're like, I can't believe they've got it priced at X. Like to me, this is a $150,000 house that's listed at $325. But we have to, we have to acknowledge as well that prices have changed,
Mm-hmm.
and it is kind of crazy sometimes when we look at that.
It is, but I think where the prices have changed so much, and this is a conversation I actually just had last night with some of my clients, and it can be, I think a lot of buyers in this market can get frustrated, and then a house can pop up, and maybe they're not looking at all of the factors that go into that, and so just understanding the pricing in the market, I think, is key right now, because like you said, the inventory is low right now, which means prices, everybody's going to get as much as they can out of them. And so I think what a lot of folks realize is that they need to be with an agent who does know how to go in and comp those properties, who does, in the long run, who's not just looking out for what they want right away, but also helping them protect their investment.
I agree with you on
All right. Well, let's shift gears and let's talk a little bit about what do sellers most want from their real estate agent. So what do you think is the number one thing to a seller?
here lately, I want to say just the price. It's been more on who can give it to you the cheapest, but give you the most out of it. And I guess
You mean like in terms of commission?
yes, they want the most out of the person or their agent, but want it to be the cheapest on the market.
Yeah, I saw a meme on Instagram the other day and it said, if you're the cheapest, nobody expects you to be the best. But if you're the best, nobody expects you to be the cheapest. And I
Right.
was like, that is so true.
Absolutely.
And there are people out there who will do a listing, 1%, 2%, whatever the case may be. But then you're going to see that reflected in the quality of the photos, the
Absolutely.
verbiage, all that kind of stuff, how much marketing they're actually doing. So,
We were just speaking about that prior to this.
yeah. And I mean, to me, I'm not going to be the cheapest person out there, but I also know I probably spend 2 to 3 times more than the average agent does advertising that property. A lot of times I'll have close to $2,000 in a listing before I ever go live on it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and I will make the sellers understand, or we'll have that discussion of, I'm putting money out of my pocket that if this house doesn't sell, I'm never getting that money back. And I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for you that, Joe Blow's not going to be doing.
Right. Absolutely.
So you all both think that pricing, the home, and the commission amount are the 2 most important things.
It is for me.
I think I'd say marketing. Who's going to? If they're even thinking to look at those things, but if you've got your investment here, who's going to get you the most out of your investment, and that comes along with, how you going to market that house.
Well, the number one thing, according to the survey by NAR, was 22% of all sellers want their agent to help them sell the home within a specific time frame.
And I think that's I can see that.
And really, that's the question that I get probably first,
Can you sell it
when you're
yesterday?
talking to a seller,
Mhm.
is, well, what kind of time frame do you think we're looking at? And not all houses are going to sell within
Right.
3 weeks.
Absolutely.
It's going to depend on the price point. It's going to depend on the, unique qualities of that home. But knowing the time frame, second thing is to help them price the home competitively. And a lot of times I have a difficult time trying to convince that seller of what the price needs to be competitive.
Right.
Everybody wants that pie in the sky price.
Mhm.
And it's just not going to happen for everybody,
Right. But I think you are very good, though, at understanding the repercussions of going in too high.
Yeah.
Because if you go in too high and you don't have a realtor who is educated on looking at those comparisons and being able to find a good price point and guide you on that, then, you're going to have drop after drop after drop after drop, which again, the public can see as well. So, and that brings up a lot of questions in a buyer's mind as to, hey, what's going on with this house?
Exactly. And that's pretty much what I tell them is if we overprice it, typically in Hamlin County, the average price reduction right now, the average price reduction is $33,000. And those homes have been on the market for like 112 days. So you're going to have to reduce the price significantly and you're going to be on the market a lot longer.
Right. You're losing time and money.
Right. So you kind of have to find out what their pain point is.
Right.
Why are you wanting to sell and then push on that a little bit.
Absolutely.
You need to also, considering the fact that when people do want to get an agent for a lower commission, I'm sure we've all dealt with that though, where you have buyers that will be looking at houses and it's 1 to 2% commission, and it's list your house for sale or whatever. I'm not going to name the exact names, but they're not advertising at all, and then you can't get them to answer the phone. You have to go through
Absolutely.
companies after companies trying to figure out who even has this home.
Oh, or they give you the seller's name and say, "Oh, I just put it on the MLS
Yes.
for them," and they handle none of that
Yeah.
transaction other than the
Yeah,
paperwork.
and that's
Yeah.
their business model.
Mhm.
And what's funny, what's absolutely crazy to me about that is one of the agents with one of these, I'll put it on the MLS for $500, is like in the top 100 of the country for number of transactions closed. And I'm like, I don't even think they should be qualified for that because they're not managing the transaction.
Absolutely.
You're negotiating, you're setting up showings, you're doing everything directly with that seller. And they're like you said, they're putting it on the MLS and then they get to close out that sale and count it as a closed sale. And I just think that's a crock.
So many
Personally.
times
Totally agree.
as buyers agents, you're calling for days and days and sometimes weeks. I had one I called for like 3 weeks in a row trying to just show the home, because you can't get in contact with somebody.
And I don't see that is absolutely not serving your client well.
No.
Yeah, as a seller, I get the fact that you think, well, all I need is for it to go on the MLS so that other agents see it and can sell it. But you're not the buyer's agent trying to deal with, getting more info on that. So while it may save you money, theoretically, I think it is going to end up costing them in the end because they don't have a
totally.
professional negotiating on their behalf
Absolutely.
or handling the market for them. It's a pain in the rear for sure.
It is.
The other thing, the number 3 on the list was to help sellers market the home to potential buyers and help the seller find ways to fix up the home to sell it for more. And I'm going to tell you, that one right there,
It's hard to do.
well, that's the one that I get so often.
Really?
It's like the initial appointment, they take you through the house and they will say on the home tour, anything you see that you think we need to address, let me know, so we can get it taken care of. And, some of the things are going to be minor, but if it's something that I feel like is really going to help them, if we're trying to stretch the price a little bit and I think that's going to help them stretch it, then I'll say, I think if you do this, it's going to get you, X number of more dollars. But, I'll go on a listing appointment and they'll be interviewing 2 or 3 agents. And usually it's on a higher end home, like a higher dollar home. And sometimes they get agents who are not used to those price points. And those agents go in and they're just like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, walking into that hotel, They are just like overwhelmed by the house and, almost taken in by it, so that they've asked them, well, what do you see? Oh, nothing at all. This house is gorgeous. It'll sell in no time.
Right.
And then I come in and I'm like, well, this is what I would do, and I give them usually at least 4 or 5 things of, maybe taking stuff down off their cabinets in the kitchen and clearing the countertops of clutter. And, let's switch out that light fixture for this light fixture and make sure all your light bulbs work. And we need to pressure wash the outside. And, I will have, and they're not usually real expensive fixes. It's just,
Right.
these are things that are going to help you get your home sold quicker. And they're like, man, we really appreciate you saying that, because the other agents we've had come through were like, oh no, everything's great with your house. And, they appreciate the fact that you can be honest with them and say, this is what we need to do,
Absolutely.
rather than just get taken in, if you will, by,
Right.
the 3,000, 4,000 square foot house on the lake. It is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think any house that you walk into, just about, there's things you can do to improve it.
Right. And most of the time, keep in mind, if you're taking a buyer, when a buyer comes into that house, it's probably not their first time in that size house. So they're going to be looking for those things. So I think you bring up a really good point in the fact that you do need to be, looking for some of the flaws that they can correct. I will tell you this. So when I came back last night, I was helping, just kind of looking through to see what some of the inventory was in a specific area that I don't typically work in a whole lot. But just trying to run through, look at pricing, look at inventory, and look at all those things. And I ran across one last night, and I really was taken aback by the lack of direction that these folks got before they had pictures made of their house. This house, and I knew before I looked at the inside of the pictures, or the inside of the house, what I was going to see in those pictures. But the outside was so cluttered up. They had been given no direction, and I already knew I'm going to hit the interior pictures, and guess what? Everywhere. You couldn't see counter space. You couldn't see anything. And that's just a disservice to their client.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I do the same thing, because, that's one of the first things I do in the morning is check the MLS, what kind of inventories come on the market. And yeah, I mean, you get to some of those interior photos and the beds aren't made. There's stuff scattered everywhere on the kitchen counter, and they're obviously cell phone photos 9 times out of 10. And, there are going to be certain houses that you list, especially if like they're tenant occupied at the time you list them. You really can't control the interior of the house. But if somebody is living in that home, like the seller, you've got to have that conversation with them. And I don't care if it's $100,000 house versus a $250,000 house. They still need to be told the best way to present their home, because you can get a multiple offer situation on a $100,000 house if you clean it up and market it right.
Right.
So
sometimes sellers just don't want to take the advice too. We have some of those.
That's true. It's on a $350,000 house. Let me say that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have those people who think they're Joanna Gaines.
Yeah.
Who are all about the DIY projects and, the antiquing and things like that. And they just have a house full of it that they are so proud of.
Absolutely. That's the tough one.
Yeah, those are the really good ones. So, and I mean, there's times that honestly, I'm just going to be like, I'm probably not the right agent for you. If they're not willing to listen to my advice, and let's talk about what we need to do. If you're not willing to accommodate in the price for those things, then I'm probably not the agent for you. But that's my take on it. All right, so I sent you guys an email last week or over the weekend about the DOJ, the NAR settlement, kind of some things. And I don't know about you guys, but this is the first thing that I have read that made the light bulb go off to me of, oh my God, that totally makes sense now.
Yes.
Because before we've been like, I've even said, well, I'm still going to negotiate, to get my seller to pay a buyer's agent commission, because, nobody's going to show their house because the buyers don't have the money. So the email said, what the DOJ doesn't want is they don't want the representative of the seller negotiating on behalf of the buyer's representative. That is still a form of collusion as far as they are concerned. And, it even says, I understand that most agents are going to have a hard time understanding that, because we were taught that's cooperation.
Right.
It's not collusion. And so I guess that's where I kind of got hung up on it. And this made it, like I said, the light bulb come on for me.
Right.
And so basically what this poster said was, you need to take your listing and just advise the seller, hey, the buyer's agent, the buyer's probably going to ask for you to compensate their agent in that offer. So while we may not have to, just blindly offer a compensation to a buyer's agent, you just need to be aware that that's going to be something that we're probably going to have to negotiate when we get the offer.
Perfect.
And I was like, oh
Yeah,
my God.
absolutely.
And so now I guess I get it. I get where they're coming
Right.
from and why we've got it out there. But I think it's a shame that I had to get this information from somebody that's like not directly tied to NAR. I think NAR has really dropped the ball on getting agents educated
Absolutely.
and prepared for this.
Yes.
And, the DOJ got approval to keep the investigation open because they don't think that we're going to change. And that was kind of the stance I took, because I'm just going to do business as normal. And, okay, so we're not going to have a field for it, but, we'll just communicate. Yeah. And that's why the DOJ wants to keep the investigation open, is because people like me, I guess.
Well,
but you don't have any guidance from NAR.
Right.
NAR has never come out and said, this is why we're doing this, and this is how you're going to be able to combat it. And I think they're doing a big disservice to their members right now.
I totally agree.
So.
But as you've said, we're all thinking, what we thought about this has changed because it's evolving as we've gone along. So the fact that you were thinking one thing and then you learned something new, I think is important, because I think in this situation, the changes are coming, whether we like them or not. You better stay close to them. You better learn what the changes are, and then just continue to keep an open mind about how to evolve with it. How to take, how to work with the new rules that are coming down. Our jobs are to serve our clients, and, we can't just say, well, we can't do it anymore. No, we got to figure out how to do it. And that's going to change until everything's just done.
So we have to watch the wording, am I correct?
We're no longer offering, well, and I say this, it doesn't go into effect until the DOJ approves it, and they're expecting that would be in July sometime, but we would no longer have buyer agent commission.
Right.
So there should be a field that comes in to replace commission that says concession, meaning that the seller will consider concessions. But then, the part that we have to remember is you're not going to turn in an offer asking for, $10,000 in seller paid closing cost, as well as however much in concessions to pay the agent. And although they're not going to count, like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac reiterated their policy of commissions are typically paid by the seller, that would not be included in the interested party contribution limit, which is like 3 to 6% depending on your program. I think it's going to be interesting to see how sellers react.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's one thing in their mind, like now they're like, okay, so the commission was X, so, this is kind of my real number I'm looking at. And then they're getting the offer of wanting all these concessions.
Right.
It's going to be a different way, and I think as listing agents, we have to really explain it to the seller of your net is the same as if we had done this, and this. But for me, the takeaway was I don't need to go into the listing appointment and automatically say, well, the commission is X and this part goes to whoever brings the buyer.
Right.
That's not for me, I guess, to dictate, even though it would be negotiable, like if the seller said something, but 9 times out of 10, they never do.
Right.
So our TAR forms are going to have to be changed, or we're not TAR, we're TN Realtor, sorry. The TN Realtor forms will have to be changed because we have a specific section right now, that says the listing broker will pay. So I don't know if that will become a concessions field, or because to me it's saying we're not supposed to have a set amount that we're offering in concession.
Absolutely.
So maybe it's just a box that we check of yes, the seller's willing to consider concessions, or no, they're not.
Still a lot up in the air.
It is, and I think from working with a lot of buyers on this and the changes that are coming down for the buyers, and like you said, I'm interested in seeing what happens with the sellers as well, and how we work these things in. And I think I have, well, again, keep in mind everything's evolving and it's all hypothetical. So, but as I go, I try to think about my processes and how this affects my processes. And then, but the one thing I still don't have worked out is, and I don't, well, some of the lower income families, I think that's the part that still worries me. If somebody just bites down on and says, no, we're not going to pay anything on that, I'm still at a point where I'm looking and I'm thinking about solutions where that's concerned. But, it's something that I think the solutions are there. You just got to keep looking for them.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see. Hopefully we will get better guidance from those above somewhere along
Hopefully.
the way. But now they're saying the DOJ may not approve the settlement because they want to see, I think the DOJ wants to see more black and white of how they expect this to work.
As do we.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Yes.
but I think, like, as Americans, we need to be speaking out because, they all preach fair housing, but when
Right.
you put the burden of the buyer agent commission on the buyer, you're eliminating fair housing for a lot of folks.
Yes, you are. I totally
So
agree.
I would say we need to be reaching out to Congress people, like our NAR lobbyists need to be, getting in there and talking to people about
Find a solution.
what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like if a seller is adamant they're not going to pay and a buyer just doesn't have it, how are we going to work this out?
Right.
Because we can't have our cake and eat it too as far as the interested party contribution.
Right.
If that buyer needs closing cost assistance and they're going to put a cap, like I don't know how it's all supposed to work out for those people.
Like you said, if they need closing cost assistance, they certainly don't have the money to pay an agent right off the bat. So, but they still deserve that representation.
Absolutely. And I mean, people say, well, they can just go through the listing agent, but like that's a big liability for a listing agent, especially on a first-time home buyer. To have them go to the listing agent and say, well, I'll just be unrepresented. That is not fair at all to a first-time home buyer.
Absolutely not.
And even now in this, environment we've been in for the past however many years, I don't want to write an offer on my own listing. I just don't want to do that because of the liability it puts on me. If the buyer comes back later and says, well, they were working for the seller, I don't think, they represented for me. Well, no, I didn't, because you checked a box saying you were unrepresented. But I also don't want to be unfair to my seller and have the seller come back and say, well, you told me that you were my designated agent.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, and that's one of the things that I enjoy when you and I go to listing appointments together and you explain that to them. And the way that we've worked the processes over the years, I know that as, we work with you a lot as buyer's agents, and if you have a house that, you have a listing on, you'll give it to one of us to run, because, and to work on, because already that your loyalty lies with your seller. Yeah. And somebody needs to have their loyalty for the buyer.
I agree. I mean, that's what kind of started our whole little group was, I'm not working the buyers.
Yes. Right. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, and it's good for us. We've learned a lot about it. And again, I love your approach on that.
So you as a seller, if someone comes to you unrepresented, are you still going to charge a commission per se, or?
How can a seller be unrepresented?
Yeah, they can't be. So, I mean, what are you going to do?
You mean for the buyer to come?
For the buyer, sorry, not seller. The buyer to come in.
I don't know. I don't know what they're going to make us do. You know what I mean? Like I've heard some people say that, when they're doing the listing paperwork, they would say, well, this is my commission. But if an unrepresented buyer comes into the picture, then that commission becomes, because I'm going to have to do the paperwork for them. I don't know. I mean, they're literally going to have to force me to do it and say, like, I don't have a choice because I don't want to play that game.
Put more work on you, so you still are going to have to be compensated at some point somehow.
Right. But to me, it's just never fair. Like if somebody has bought and sold 10 houses,
Yep.
they're an investor. You know what I mean? And I did have a situation like that last year. I was the co-listing agent with an agent out of the Knoxville MLS on a lake house up here. And buyer approached me, said, "Hey, I saw you had this house listed. We want to make an offer on it." I didn't know the seller from Adam. You know what I mean? This particular person that bought the house or put the offer in through me, they buy and flip houses all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a matter of negotiating with them. It was, this is what we're willing to pay. That was like one exception to my rule just because of the unique circumstance. I didn't really know the seller. I was a marketing agent for the house, basically, because that agent wasn't in our MLS. She doesn't do a lot of lake property. And I mean, it worked out for the seller because we went into a multiple offer situation and they got above list price. So everybody's happy.
Nice.
Sometimes it works out.
Sometimes, but it has to be a very special circumstance before I'll just waive, you know what I'm saying, and do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. So again, we do sell a lot of land. I think both of y'all were showing some properties with land or some lots this weekend.
All weekend.
So what do you think makes a good land agent? What qualities do you think makes a good land agent?
Somebody who's, I mean, to be a good land agent, you got to be able to spend time understanding what, you know, the details of that land, understanding what all goes into prepping that land to do whatever they want to do with it. And, you know, being able to go back and having somebody, again, that has enough knowledge to know the things that are on the background of that they can go in and do the research to make sure that, you know, that everything's in order.
What do you think makes a good land broker?
I think the biggest thing is knowing the boundary lines. So many times that you'll get there and they'll be like, well, there's no flags, there's no pins, or, you know, where is a 1080 mark if you're doing a lake property, or 1075. I like to be able to walk the property with them and kind of being like, okay, this is, you know, pretty close, may not be exact, but this is pretty close to where it is. Knowing what the restrictions are for that property. I think that's pretty important.
Understanding really really understanding what the land uses are, spending more time in it than just walking out there and just looking at it and going. I have a lot of folks that'll call me about land sometimes, and they're so gung-ho because they're like, oh yay, we just want this $12,000 lot here to be able to do what we want to do on it. And then when you start talking to them about what that really means to them, well, their mind kind of shifts a little bit. So yeah, having somebody that understands what the difference in the land is, what properties can and can't be used for.
Well, and just knowing like the utility costs and things,
Yeah.
because people don't think, you know, the cost of installing a well has skyrocketed.
Ask all the time.
Just like everything else since COVID. I know when I first started, I mean, you could get a well for like $10,000 or $12,000. Total like price tag shock to find out that a well now is going to be almost double that, you know, and it's going to depend on how deep they have to dig. And a question that I'm sure you all get, because I get it, is, well, how deep are they going to have to dig to hit water? I don't have any way of knowing that. Joe Samples doesn't have any way of knowing that. Like, you're going to have to get one of them men that has one of them little water stick things, you know. I know people that swear by that. I think it's hilarious. But I don't know that there's any way. You know, you can ask the neighbor on either side, but if you've got a lot that's vacant on, you know, vacant land on either side of it, nobody knows how far you're going to have to dig.
Right.
I've sold houses that they had a well and they had to go 800 feet deep. That's a big, expensive well.
Right.
You know, and then you've got some that are like 150 foot deep. Depends on the water table, depends on the elevation of the property, and there's just no way to know that.
Right.
And the rock that they might hit.
Yes. Especially around our lake.
Yeah. To me, those are the biggest things. And I've had so many buyers who have went through subdivisions where they've seen a bunch of my signs and they've had another agent at the time, that they went through them. And they call me and they're like asking these questions, and I have answers for them on all of it. And they're like, do I have to go back and use my agent? Can I just use you to go look at property? And I'm like, if you've not signed anything, you're free to use whoever you want. Because they're like, my agent didn't know anything. Like,
Right.
I'd ask them where the boundary lines are. They don't have a clue. I ask them what kind of utilities. They don't know. They're going to have to research it. I asked them what the restrictions were. They didn't know. They were going to have to look it up.
Right.
Like, what good are you to me if I'm having to do all the research to find this stuff out? So,
Right.
yeah, like you were talking about, it's a $12,000 lot, but there's a reason it's priced at $12,000 because
Right.
it's going to cost you probably $30,000 to put a well and a septic in.
Right.
Or maybe another 10 or 15 to do the excavation work.
That's on the cheap side. The 10 or 15.
Yeah, depending on the lot. But yeah. Do you all ever talk to people, like if they're looking at land, acreage, not just a lot? Do y'all talk to them about, the green belt and maybe the advantage of looking at 15 plus acres versus, the 10 to 12 acre?
Yes, just helping people understand, of course, the tax. And a lot of times, again, we need to be the source of the source and not necessarily the source. And so, just knowing where to send people to look at things and telling them what to start looking at, if they're, to know if that property suits for them. But absolutely, the Greenbelt's it's a big deal, and they need to be aware of it.
People.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the out-of-state people usually are just so thrilled at our property taxes,
Or
period.
cheap, period. So then when you throw in that there's an extra
Tax
for the green
break?
belt, it's like, what?
Yeah, and I know I've sold, some larger acreage tracts, and the people will come to look at it and ask about the property tax, and you're like, well, it's such and such, and they're like, is that a month? I thought the taxes were cheaper here, and I'm like, that's a year.
Right.
And they're like, holy cow.
Tried that before.
Yeah.
Too.
And then when you tell them, about the green belt and how all that works, and they're like, okay, so it'd be like what, double the tax? Yeah, that's still cheaper than what we were paying back home. So, but yeah, to me, that's a huge difference in looking at acreage. Somebody might find something, they'll say, we want between 10 and 15. Well, you're better off looking for 15 minimum,
Right.
because even if it's not currently on green belt, you can apply for the green belt, whether it be wooded land, cleared land, whatever,
Right.
and it'll save you a bunch of money.
That's true.
And for those who don't know what greenbelt is, it's just a special tax classification that Tennessee has where if you own 15 or more acres, you're going to get a reduced tax rate. And you only have to file for it once, but whenever you sell that property, the new buyer has to file for it within 30 days or the taxes get doubled and somebody has to pay the rollback taxes on it. Sorry, my allergies are killing me today. So what do you tell somebody who calls you and asks, what's the average price per acre in East Tennessee?
Well, it depends. It depends on really location here, big time. I know, like if we get like Washburn area versus Hamilton County or those places like that, you're really looking at a huge difference, and it depends on how the land lays out. So I really don't like to price per acre. I'll be honest with you, I don't.
Not off the cuff. Mm-mm.
Well, you can.
Comp it,
Yeah.
comping it and seeing what's nearby. It would be about the only way, but
Right.
just to pull up and be like, well, this one's 15,000 per acre. Usually, no, because it depends on our
It does.
county and everything.
It depends on the county. It depends on the topography.
Right.
Is it wooded? Is it cleared?
Highest best use.
Does it have any kind of water on it?
All
I
of
mean,
those
there's
things.
so many factors. And then I've had people who look at, lots in a subdivision and talk about the price per acre. I'm like, that's irrelevant.
Right. Absolutely.
It doesn't matter if it's a 5 acre building lot or a half acre building lot. At the end of the day, you can only put one house on it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
price per acre is totally irrelevant. And especially when you're looking at lake lots, I mean, you'll have a half-acre lake lot that can sell for $200,000. Well, that doesn't mean that land's worth $400,000 an acre, you know?
Right, absolutely.
So yeah, it was one of the things I worked on this weekend. I showed this one in particular, folks, 9 properties. It was like lots, and we went from half acres all the way up to one that was almost 4 acres in the exact same price, anywhere from 100,000 to 200,000, but they were pretty much right on the money with a half acre somewhere 150,000 if they was leveled towards the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Versus some that were on a hill. I mean, it really depends with our lake lots.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're going to have some that are theoretically lake lots because they do touch the water,
Yeah.
but they're a bluff.
Yeah.
Like you're not really
Especially
going
on
to
what lake.
access.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and on Cherokee, I think most of our lots are better
Yes.
than some of the
more
Norris
level.
Lake and Douglas Lake lots.
Mm-hmm.
But you still have a few of those areas, Walnut Bend's one of them,
Mhm.
where you've got the good lake side,
Yes.
but then the other side of the subdivision is a bluff.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have lake properties that technically you could never really get to the lake from that property.
It's just a view.
Unless you zip lined or, you know,
Right.
something
Right.
like that. Put in a tram car like they have at Turner's Landing.
Yes.
No, I don't think it would because that's pretty steep. I think you'd go
Probably.
down
It'd
the
probably be
lake.
very fun.
But Turner's Landing's a lot like that too, though. That you got the foot down there that has access, but then the rest of it sits up high. So
Yeah.
it's a gorgeous subdivision. Don't misunderstand me, but yeah. So I'm with you guys though. I don't. When I'm out with somebody, I actually went a few weeks ago to show a big stretch of property out in Claiborne County, and that was immediately what they wanted me to do was shoot from the cuff on pricing, and I truly don't like to do that because the topography here changes really quickly, and can be different throughout that land, and that's one thing that we talked about on that property because part of that was great flat land, and then part of it was in a ravine. So, that there's going to be a difference in that. It's just hard to shoot from the hip in Tennessee on property,
Very much so.
on land.
Well, and y'all get it from the buyer's side. I get it from the seller. Like somebody will call me, wanting to sell, and they're like, "So what are y'all getting price per acre now?"
Yes.
And I'm like, "Dude, I don't even know which property is
Right.
yet. Like I've got to have some context to be able to give you a price." And I mean, traditionally, Greene County brings the most price per acre than any county around, but most of Greene County is
More level.
It's much
And
more level.
gorgeous.
cleared, and the mountain views. People talk about wanting to live in Jefferson County and Sevier County because of the views. And I'm going to tell you, Greene County's got some
Greene
of the
County is
beautiful.
I said the
gorgeous.
same thing.
And some of Clark County does.
Yes.
Yeah.
But a
just
lot of
depends.
that land in Greene County, when you're talking about, it's so lush. I mean, Greene
It's
County's
river.
got some gorgeous property.
Yeah. They got that river property running through there. It is. It's beautiful.
A lot of pastures.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rich green pastures. That's what's so pretty about it. You're driving down through there and you got those
Miles
just-
long of just green.
Yes,
And
just
then the mountain
green
in
and
the
then the
back.
mountains in the
Yeah.
back. It is beautiful.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. Anything else y'all ladies want to talk about this morning?
Good, thank you.
I think the spring market's picking back up, getting excited. So
Definitely.
Yeah,
Really
it's kind
roll.
of a roller coaster right now because of the interest rates and stuff. I know the rates came out this morning and we're looking at like 7.5 on a 30-year conventional. So we got more and more people using FHA. They may even have a 20% down payment, but they're using FHA because their interest rate's about 0.75% less. So
mhm.
it'll be fun to watch because, now the Fed's saying they may not cut rates at all this year because inflation. So we really need the rates to come back down some
Definitely.
Agreed.
because I don't think our inventory is going to. We need more inventory. We've got buyers out there.
You
even
would
at the
think it
higher
would be
rates.
opposite.
Yeah.
You would think we would have more inventory because it's a seller's market right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, but most of those, like, I think the stats like 90% of all home sellers have an interest rate of 6% or below.
So they don't want to
they don't want to sell.
Step back out.
And
Right.
the flip side of it is, yes, they've got more equity in their home than they probably have ever had. And they can sell it for more than they probably ever thought they would. But where are they going to go?
Right.
You know, they've got to look for a house to buy, and they're going to be buying at the height of the market. So sometimes it may be more of a lateral move than it is a vertical move for
That's
them.
true. Very true.
So it is hard to, you know, a lot of people will sell because they have to sell right now.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are not going to sell until them rates come down some.
I have a lot reaching out to me right now for rentals until
Same.
the market comes down some. Or they're just a few points away from getting it. So
Right. And I have some folks that are in rentals right now who are, maybe they're getting tapped, getting hit with their rates going up and all of those things, and they want to start looking for a house. And I'm hoping that we can find something, but that with the interest rates being so high, I mean, it's a hard battle.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, buying your own home has been cheaper
Yes.
than renting a house. And right now, we're kind of upside down on that, where even though rent prices are high, it's typically going to be cheaper to rent than it is to buy right now.
Yeah.
Especially with the average home sales price being at $300,000 now. So, all right. Thank you, ladies.
thank you guys.
And we will see you again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you.